loves kale?
So that it can keep warm and you can act like it's your egg. And see, silly it is.
Yeah.
I've squared that off and come over a little bit.
Certainly now at this juncture, after doing a handful of experimental buildings, it certainly doesn't interest me to go back into a safe mode.
Whether or not it makes business sense on a bottom line question remains to be seen, but whether or not it makes business sense in terms of making us more attractive to local consumers, that's undeniable.
But the community is just elated over this building. I mean, they have taken ownership of this building.
They've been embraced because I think the thing is it's the little guy doing something really significant.
The first thing we want is an incredibly well-built shell, tight and a lot of insulation.
Looking at geothermal, you're going to use about 70% less than a natural gas system.
We were willing to buy something that offered a lot more in terms of efficiency and green technology and make do with less square footage.
But more important than any regulation or example or model, I think, is the fact that we have driven these principles into our DNA. People support creatively protecting the environment. They embrace sustainability. We have businesses, governments, neighborhood organizations that really are on the cutting edge.
Dan's like it. I mean, we haven't watched it a lot. I know there's like the days I used to there. What did you do on that day? That's pretty silly.
With my background in architecture, affordable housing, I had a lot of ideas about what I wanted in our house, and specifically we had a sort of design intent. We started out of trying to design a net zero energy and net zero water house, and we didn't achieve those goals, but we made great strides towards that.
So we have two solar systems on the roof. At the back of the house we have a solar thermal system that makes hot water, and at the front of the house is a solar PV system that makes electricity. We designed the house for a passive solar orientation, so it's oriented east and west with large south-facing windows that you see there, and then smaller openings on the front and back of the house, and then very few windows on the north side of the house. We did that to take advantage of passive solar heat, so in the winter sunlight will come in. We've got a earthen floor that actually acts as a thermal mass that will store some of that solar energy. And then in the summer, the eaves of the house protect and shade the house to keep the heat out. And actually we're going to add a trellis system here for the lower windows, which will probably grow grapes on. Be kind of similar to the railings that we've got to shade the lower windows on the south side of the house.
Vernacular architecture are buildings that were designed by native people who understood their local climate and local building materials, and were able to design their buildings looking at the sun conditions, looking at water restrictions, and have it be a much lighter touch on the land than most homes in particular now. What I think that some of the principles that were used in vernacular architecture that were sort of lost around the Industrial Revolution and post-Industrial Revolution was really looking at what is the site-specific conditions for the home, what are some of the microclimate conditions, what are the prevailing winds, looking at sun angles, some of those types of principles that I think have been lost and are being rediscovered.
And, oh, yeah. Sorry, Zal.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
And what do you do with the eggs?
We eat them.
Some of them, and we give them away.
Who do you give them to?
Our neighbors. This is our water because like it's special, or because it's rainwater. We have a rainwater system that filters all our water before we drink it and use it.
Today is a typical gray, drizzly May day in Portland. We've had a stretch of a nice weather about a week or so, so we were making lots of hot water and lots of electricity and draining the tanks down a little bit, so this little bit of rain is nice for it to fill back up. I just checked and we've got about 6,000 gallons in there right now, so it's about 75–80% full. The last couple of summers we've actually made it through about August before having to switch over to city water, so we're only on city water about 6 weeks a year or so. We're using about 100 to 120 gallons a day, and so for a typical family of 4, that's about half of what they would use, and that's through just conservation. So we've got low flow aerators, we've got dual flush toilets, and so there's a lot you can do on the conservation side first, and then you can supplement it with the harvested rainwater.
This neighborhood, it's called the Ainsworth Collective, and we often call it an accidental intentional community because it kind of seems like a whole bunch of like-minded, sustainability-oriented folks settled in this area. One of the trade-offs is, even though we could take public transportation from here, it's not super easy, and it's certainly not super efficient when we've got a busy family of 4. But yeah, I mean, I definitely think that, you know, from a landscaping standpoint and from a building standpoint, there's a lot of lessons that could be learned from our property. But I mean, Craig's the system guy on the house. I'm kind of the system person in the yard, but you know, we definitely are trying to think in whole systems. And you know, in the yard, we've got a mixture of wildlife and native plantings as well as food, and trying to intersperse. And the next project after chickens, I want to get bees so that we can have some pollinators as well. So we have plenty of pollen. I see bees all the time, and hummingbirds, but really doing that even more intentionally. Plus we go through a lot of honey. So, I mean, and that's one of the things too that you know, thinking of being in place, trying to get to the point where we have more and more of our food produced here on site, and that's a slow process, but we're getting there. So.
So we're down to the final selection of our lot. We've narrowed it down to 2 lots, and so we're standing in the rain once again, trying to zero in on our lot.
There aren't regular sized lots really in inner southeast Portland to build a new house on, and so when we found out about this, we got real excited, and then the more we looked into it, the more appealing it got.
And it seems like a lot of people today are getting tired of living in their older bungalows that have maybe single pane windows, or you know, aren't insulated, and so having a brand new house that's built with energy efficiency in mind and sustainable elements is really people are really getting a lot of attention for it, or towards it.
Yeah, it'll be a great process. All the houses are Earth Advantage. That means they're 15% above code. And I work at the Energy Trust of Oregon, so I'm very interested in putting solar on the house, and there'll be other features that we explore.
You can walk to grocery from here. The bike lane on Clinton is literally a block away. There's a whole bunch of kind of neighborhood restaurants and retail along Division right here. Powell's super close also. And it's literally a 10 to 15 minute bike ride to downtown.
I mean, we've got, you know, besides architects, we've got attorneys, we've got designers, we've got just people in the labor workforce. It's just a really hodgepodge of professions and interests, which I think really lends itself well to a community that this is and is going to become. And I think having the commons between us will really bring everybody a little bit closer together, which I think is really something that appeals to everybody. And the thing I noticed right away, especially my wife and I being seniors, is like, oh my God, the number of young children, people are just, you know, either just had babies or going to have babies, and so it's really nice. And I think that kind of thing, there's nothing that brings people closer together than children. You know, I really believe that.
We're interested in any possible reuse of materials coming from Waverly School, and some of that might be brick and some of it might be wood. Maybe we could use that for outdoor patio in the case of the brick, or railings or interior wood mantle in our house.
It's a little bit of a balancing act of, like, first of all that wood is going to get recycled, and it will get recycled. But the question is what of that can we reuse into the houses? And that's more of an economics question, right? How long are they spending separating that wood? Those machines have a runtime, or are expensive to run, for example. So the direction that we gave them is pull as much as you can out of the building, particularly the older, larger wood members.
Materials right here, we have assorted concrete that's ready for crushing to go back in as fill. We have a metal pile right there that will go to the recycle yard. We have kind of a material that has been picked through just the first time, and we'll do that some more later on. We've got a wood pile here, which is sorted wood, that'll be clean. And then we have our demolition pile on the far side there that needs to be done, needs to be sorted through. And then we kind of have a little pile of brick here, which we've gone around the whole building and peeled off the brick, and we'll have a pile of that. Right off the bat, you're 85 to 95% recycle out of the whole building. And that's exactly what we're doing here today, is trying to separate all that stuff. But you get about 95% recycle. Now, salvage material, I would probably have to come up with a percentage of that later. But ideally, especially with this subdivision, people want to reuse a lot of the product that's going into it. So we're going to see a high salvage value as well as a high recycle value. You know, I would say we have always, in the demolition industry, tried to separate those materials because of the cost of landfilling everything. I think what's really made a difference is there's now been a market that's created for recycled materials. And so we're able to bridge that last 10 or 15% in recycle, because now there's a market for those materials, and it makes sense to get them separated from the demolition.
The inside of the building had virtually no historic significance. It was an institutional use, right? All the materials used and put into the building were not, you know, there was no character to the fixtures. There was no kind of decorative elements to it. It's a pretty standard, inexpensively built building for its time. So, you know, for that side of things, it doesn't feel quite so bad. But the front facade of the building is beautiful, and it's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to see it go. There's no doubt.
It was just traumatic to watch. It's just something I've looked at every day for 35 years. Poof. I worry that it'll be shoddy materials being used, and so much of the stuff and the building, new buildings these days are made out of things that just don't last. I mean, we have houses that were built, there's one there and they're built in the 1800s. There's 3 of them. They last. And then when I see all this old growth lumber and true two-by-fours, it's splintered, I find it really upsetting. I'd like to see houses in architecturally designed in keeping with the neighborhood, sort of in proportion, unlike one down the street that's, you know, a McMansion on a postage stamp.
But I think, you know, as a whole, what we're replacing this old school with is a really great environment and some great family energy and a solid contribution of the community and the neighborhood. And then there'll be a pathway that'll lead right into the commons about 10 foot wide. And there'll be houses on either side of the pathway. My house will be kind of near where those trees are. And then it'll open up into the commons and it'll go 50 feet wide, and there'll be play equipment on one side. On the other side, there'll be kind of a hangout space. And then there'll be a big open and green. And then at the far side, it'll go into the community garden area and then a pathway on that side again. So yeah, I can totally picture it. The houses will go, the yards and the houses will be probably to the edge of that building right now.
Kale is coming. The bees are humming.
Who loves kale?
The thing that I like about garden class is, well, I really like outside. We get a first-hand experience on what the plants are like and what they taste like and how to plant them.
Why is it important for us to know about the bolting process? What comes from the
So
flowers?
we can, know what happens when we plant our own flowers.
The seeds, very good. The seeds come next.
We get to learn about different plants and animals.
The thing I like about garden is that we get to discover new things about plants and we get to eat them.
There is art and planting things, which are my 2 favorite things.
And then if you collect them, you can plant them the following year, or if they fall to the ground.
I'm okay. They'll grow back. Get the false kale. So that is more.
You guys want to give them a try?
Sure.
All right.
What are these?
These ones still need to come out of the pod.
Let's go plant M2EE.
Right. So there's this good spot right over here where you can do some
planting. One of the things that I like about garden is planting the big pea thing. The PTP. It's just really cool that it's a house made out of plants.
The thing I like about garden is that you get to learn the Latin names of plants that you usually call like tomatoes or cucumbers.
I've seen a couple Spider-Man movies and he's been on roofs and I'm like, wow, I wonder what it's like to actually be up there.
I really like gardening because I'm really excited for the baby chicks to hatch.
My name is Erin Altz and I'm the garden teacher at Trillium Charter School in Portland, Oregon. Trillium is a K-12 school serving about 350 students, and this past year we started our pilot program for the Rooftop Garden, which has supplied the produce to our school lunch program. And as you can see, we've got a pretty amazing garden. Garden-based education is a theme that runs through our school and is incorporated into curriculum. Students are able to learn hands-on about stormwater management, about where and how to grow food locally and sustainably, and to practice organic gardening principles. So today we're going to be learning a little bit about seed saving. We just talked about what happens when the kale flowers start bolting. The rooftop garden is important because it teaches students how to grow food on their own, where it comes from, and why it's important to grow food locally and sustainably. It also teaches them about organic gardening principles and about stormwater management in the context of green roofs.
Someone once called me a green architect, and I think they missed on both fronts. A, I'm not an architect. B, doing green work isn't at the fore of what I do. But I wouldn't not do green work. I wouldn't do ungreen work, if that's a strange way of saying that I like doing green work. It's the right thing to do. I couldn't imagine working in an industry like this, where commercial buildings have such a large impact on global warming. I couldn't imagine not doing a compelling building, a building that made or pushed the envelope to make our society and our region and our world a better place. I don't look for the big firms and the big developers specifically to roll out the experimental projects. It's going to be projects like this that then inform the larger projects, and they can pick and choose what they like. I don't mind being on the bleeding edge, because I know that if I don't do it, the big guys aren't, and we're not going to push the envelope in that same way.
The greening of me has happened specifically because of my relationship to this building and to Kevin. Opportunities present themselves because people come to us thinking that we are concerned about that sort of stuff. And as much as I'd like to say I actively pursued this building and my relationship with Kevin because I had a pre-existing kind of green mentality, that's not the case. I have been greened by my association with this building. It does make business sense. Whether or not it makes business sense on a bottom line question remains to be seen. But whether or not it makes business sense in terms of making us more attractive to local consumers, that's undeniable. Well, I think that the green sort of revolution or green as a symbol has become a value add for people. And I think that they like to patronize businesses that they think are operating with sustainable practices. Now, sustainable, forgive me for using that word because I think it's loaded and kooky and resists definition because it has so many. But if you can show to your patrons that you are green, that you're concerned with your footprint, then that makes them more likely to patronize your business.
This is the egg that Lacey and Adele were fighting over.